Welcome to the channel. My name is Rosh, and welcome to this series on how to create a six-figure business. And the idea of this channel is to find your unique success combination. What is your unique success combination? The thing is, if you don't know and don't understand what that is, well, that means someone or something or just life will create it for you. And sometimes they forget to add the word success in that combination. So I like to really be mindful of that idea. But more than anything, along our journey, we want to grow our businesses. And a lot of people talk about, hey, earning, millions and millions and millions of dollars, which there's nothing wrong with, but you got to start somewhere. And I've had different people lined up to talk about how they grew their businesses. And some people are just crossing the six-figure, and some people are at the other end of the range staring into the sevens. And I am happy to say that my friend Robert Bauer is the lad. He's doing a great job growing his company, and he almost did not qualify for this show, but
in a good way.
In a good way, in an awesome way. And so we're going to talk about Goofy Faces, and goofyfaces.com is where you could hire a character artist for your event party. And there are a lot of ways to, approach this, I guess. But ultimately, yes, I just want to talk with Robert today in just in a serious, down-to-earth way. How did he grow his business? So first of all, welcome, Robert, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Thank you. Thanks, Raj. Well, my name's Robert Bauer, and I own and have created a company called Goofy Faces, where you can book caricature artists for events large and small. You could hire an artist for your birthday party, or you could hire 10 or 20 artists for your large corporate event, and everything in between. I'm one of the artists. I still draw as well as oversee the company. We also provide caricatures as gifts, so people can order them right through our website, and we draw them from scratch. And you can also visit one of our many caricature and face painting stands that we own and operate across the country at different large zoos and aquariums and even amusement parks throughout the United States.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a great idea. I mean, tell us a little bit about your beginning, why you decided to get into this idea of representing and supporting and bringing in other artists into your business. I think a lot of times artists feel so alone and they just don't think of doing that. And, so share us a little bit about the beginnings.
Sure. So, none of this is like an overnight type of deal or a black and white snap your fingers and this is what I'm going to do kind of thing. It's a process, and it evolves, and it takes time. And my initial background as I wrapped up art school was to become a freelance artist. The last full-time job I ever had was back at the late 80s, early 90s as a graphic designer, computer graphic artist, because that's what I went to school for. And I actually was doing comfortable amounts of income per year just doing that as a freelancer, not six-figure, but enough that I could easily have done that. But as anybody who may be watching this who does any type of freelance realizes, it can be extremely feast or famine, up and down. You're always in two stages. You're either stressed out because you have so much work and you don't know how you're going to get it done, and then you go through those pits, and then you're stressed out because you don't know where you're going to get your money from. So it's a constant year-round stress out, and it can get a little bit wearing on you after a while. So I love the work that I was doing as a freelance artist. I was in Metro Detroit, so I did a ton of work for GM, Ford, Chrysler, and tier one suppliers like Delphi and Lear and all those kind of guys. And when you're dealing with those types of companies, you're doing that type of freelance work, you can get a lot of steady overturn work that keeps coming in, and you can make a certain amount of money. But the biggest challenge when you're a freelancer is when you're not working, you're not earning. There's no income coming in. And no matter how much work they throw you, they're going to hit bouts where they don't need you. And so then you're constantly juggling, trying to figure out how to fill those voids. And then most freelancers I know fill those voids by trying to expand what it is they do. I was doing a lot of specific corporate graphics, but then I also got into caricatures while I was in art school, and that was a great way to make side money. And I continue to do that. Even as I freelance, I always drew caricatures at events where agencies would call me up and hire me and other artists, and we'd go out. And it was always in the evening, or it was always on the weekend, so it didn't really interfere with my other freelance work. So that was like how I was able to fill those gaps for quite a while. So I continued to do that up until right around 2000, 2001. And then after 9/11 hit, it really took a toll on the freelance market, especially with the big three. They shut down, and they rethought how they were going to spend their money. And a lot of times when a company shuts down and doesn't use you for a while, they realize they never really needed you to begin with. And then they just decide not to call you anymore. And I was watching that occur. And I was at a point in my life where I had a mortgage, and I had a child and a wife, and I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We have a place in Rochester Hills, and I didn't want to have to relocate to try to find this real specific type of corporate work that I had been doing. And so I thought maybe I'll do a flip. Instead of doing caricatures a little bit on the side and mostly freelance work, maybe I can build a business out of the caricature work. So what I did was I did a little bit of research. I was able to get a lot of gigs through agencies, but that's limiting because you only get work when they call you.
Right.
I wanted to start getting my own gigs directly. And then I was slowly starting to get that. But one of the challenges, even when you book out yourself, is a lot of times all the people are requesting you on the same date at the same time. And then you can only take one of them. So then
Right.
you might pass it on to another friend of yours who also draws, or you just turn it down blank and you don't get anything. So I thought, well, maybe I'll work like an agent does, and I'll represent these other local artists as well as myself, and I'll book them out and make a little bit on the booking. So that's kind of where Goofy Faces started. I actually came up with a name and created the website in 2000. While I was trying to expand my range of graphic design and such. I was learning how to do HTML. I was learning how to do web programming. So I thought, but I'll build my own site. So I thought, I do caricatures. I'm going to build a site that allows people to order caricatures over the internet as gifts. And this is 2000. So this
Yeah.
is pre-digital camera. This is like the only digital camera was the Apple like 101 camera that took like 72 DPI images, and it was
Yeah.
really, I was really at the forefront. I was too much at the forefront. And the idea I thought was, well, no one knows what to do with these digital images other than maybe print them out. So this might be a neat use for them. And maybe I can network with places that receive these digital images and offer our services. So that was the initial idea. So that was incubating in the background. All the time I was still doing freelance for the automotive companies. I was building this website in the background and trying to make it work and learn everything I could about understanding how the internet worked, and how e-commerce worked, and how I could apply my skill set to that. So over time, the website was self-sufficient. It was generating income. I was able to open up my own bank account separate from my freelance business just for Goofy Faces. That was a big step. And then once 9/11 had hit, and we got into 2001, 2002 and stuff, I started trying to figure out maybe there's something more I could do with that part of my career and less with the freelance work. And a big turning point was when I'd heard about the NCN, which is the National Caricaturist Network. It's a trade association, nonprofit trade association for caricature artists. And I had heard a little bit about them over time, but never really pursued it. And now all of a sudden I was interested because they had their own message board. Again, this is pre-Facebook. This is just when people had local bulletin board and stuff like that. And I used to frequent this one called The Loop, and it was just for caricature artists. And they were all talking how excited they were about going to the next annual caricature convention. So I was starting to ask questions. All right, guys, talk me into going. What's this all about? By then it was 2004.
Okay.
So they were telling me, go to this convention, it'll change your life, which was a pretty big statement. And all these caricature artists from all over the world attend. They get hundreds of artists, and they compete in these competitions, and they have seminars, and you network with all these other artists. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do anything with caricature, this looks like a good place to check things out. So I went to my first convention in 2004, and I was totally blown away. I had been involved in conventions and meetings doing corporate graphics for years. And what was fascinating to me is how dynamic these artists were when they got on stage and they gave their presentations or they talked to the crowd. They were more dynamic and more engaging than any automotive executive who had a teleprompter and graphics over his shoulder and wearing suit and tie. They were stiff. These people were fascinating. So I was hooked. So I started going to every convention. By the second convention, I was on the board. By the third or fourth convention, I was elected the president. And I ran for 3 years, and we did a lot of cool things. We changed the name to International Society of Caricature Artists. Now it's known as DISCA. I helped usher that in so that way it was more describing of its membership, which is international. Mm-hmm. And every year it has a convention, and every year the talent just continues to get better and better. And you get to meet all of these fantastic artists doing their own thing with caricature and comic book, and they work at theme parks, or they work for magazines like Mad Magazine, or they do work for Marvel and DC. It really is a nice like ground zero for a specific type of artist. So you really get to meet the right people that you want to get to know. That allowed me to take my website to the next step, and that was, instead of just me booking myself out as well as a few local artists, I could go nationally. Right. So that was a huge turning point when Goofy Faces decided, hey, we're going to represent you guys. There was already a couple of good artists or good agents who go to the convention. They already had started doing that. And I told them, guys, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. I'm going to be a national agent like you guys. And they could have been really prickly about it, but they were actually very welcoming and said, hey, you know, we don't step on each other's toes, and we try to help each other out. So, and it's still to that way today, you know, a decade later. And that's kind of where the rubber met the road. The ability to represent all these really talented artists around the country and find them work in their local areas was very encouraging and rewarding. And then the final stage was when we started opening up retail stands. I learned all about the art of retail art, which I didn't even understand what that term meant until I went to my first convention. It means that when you're selling your art, say at a festival or at a theme park or at a zoo, that's considered retail. So I was learning all about that from all of these artists that I met. And we opened our first retail stand at the Detroit Zoo back in, I think, 2005. And it was trial by fire. It was extremely stressful because I didn't know anything about it. And what we thought was going to be a weekend endeavor, the gentleman from the zoo who brought us in says, no, I need you here every day in the summer, not weekends, 7 days a week. Oh, wow. So it was extremely stressful because I had to, you know, find artists and train them the way that we wanted them to draw. I had to be one of them. I remember going 2 weeks straight without a day off. And that was probably the hardest I've worked in a long, long time. But we got it going, and we did 3 full seasons at the Detroit Zoo. We later added the Toledo Zoo and the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo. Then we went a long way and got the Florida Aquarium down in Tampa. We now have 8 locations nationwide. We're as far away as the LA Zoo. We're at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. We have 2 stands in Denver at the Denver Zoo, as well as Elitch Gardens Amusement Park. We have a few others. We're at Zoo Tampa. Where else are we? We're looking to add 2 or 3 more within the next season or 2. We've grown the business to such a point now that the retail is our fastest growing portion. As a company, I represent us and I pitch to potentially new locations. But the cool thing, like the last 2 years, is they're actually coming to us. They actually call us up. Yeah. They've seen us at some of the other stands. They like how we do it. Because of my corporate background, doing all of the stuff for so many years for GM, Ford, and Chrysler, I do well with corporate speak as an artist. I know what they're looking for. I know the look they want inside their theme parks and their zoos and such. And that's a huge advantage because there's a lot of very talented artists out there, but they don't understand how to kind of have a corporate mentality when it comes to their business. And we've always had that, and it's always served me and my company really well.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, when we talk about growing a business and what can someone learn from what you just said, just some themes from other, you know, guests are, you know, one, partnering with other people, because you can't just do it yourself. It takes other people in most cases. And also working with national organizations, where the people are, and connecting with people who are in those organizations. And also, we have a combination on this channel. We talk about 7-5-3-1, 7 sources of income, 5 people that support you in your business outside of your business, 3 processes, just really to, some people have more processes, some have less, but it's, be mindful of having processes, improving them, and then 1 channel, building a channel. Now, what I see with you, obviously you have multiple sources of income within your business. You have, you personally as an artist, you have your retail, you have placing artists, and I also know you are, on booking artists online. And you have the ability to have people upload a photo and have a caricature done online, and even live. You have live services now, which is obviously an evolution of continuing to, just embrace the technology, which it sounds like you've done since the very beginning.
Yeah.
And the processes. I mean, just understanding the process. I have a feeling, based on what you just said, that the first retail stand runs much smoother. The current ones.
I hope not.
You did it right the first time, and then you failed afterward. No. Yeah, but no, over time you got better, and those processes got better to the point that now people are calling you because they like the way you run your stands. So, I mean, there's a lot there, and things that you have done right. What would you say are some of the number 1 factors for you in terms of growth? When you look at thinking about growing your business, maybe some of the things that you felt, and I know you've kind of, shared some of that already, but in the early days, what really were the big factors? And then also moving forward, what do you think are some of the things you're going to be looking at to help grow your business?
I have no idea.
Good to know.
Okay.
You're like the rest of us. Good to know. He's mortal.
Just no. Looking back, some of it is just a mindset. When I decided to try to switch over, it's very scary for anyone who decides to venture out on their own. And if you pursue any type of business, if you have any self-awareness, you realize what you don't know, and it's extremely intimidating. But that's important to embrace that. It's like, I'm aware of what I don't know, and there may be even some stuff that I'm not aware of that I don't know, but I'm going to roll with it. If you're rigid, 2 bad things can happen to you. If you think you know it all, and then you get smacked with reality, you are going to fail miserably because everybody knows otherwise. Like, you don't know it all, and other people are doing it better. And of course, the other one is you are totally intimidated by the minute you run up against something you don't understand, and you crumble, and you're like, I'm going to go back to what I know how to do, and I'm just going to clean houses for a living, or what other respectable thing that you're doing, but you know that you are limited in your growth or whatever. So one of the first things I decided, I promised myself when I took on doing the caricatures is everything was going to be looked at as a learning experience. Because if you look at everything as a learning experience, you don't feel so much pressure if you fail, because there's been many failures. I currently have 8 retail stands that are successfully running. We just closed one. I had 9. I looked over the dais of a list of stands that we've had since 2005. That's 14 years worth. There's over 25 stands that we've had. Now, granted, we never lost money at any of them, so I don't consider them failures. But in my business, I learned that it's quite common to have turnover. And sometimes the turnover happens, you have no control over it. You didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
New people come in, new ideas come forth, and they just part ways with you. So that was a learning experience. The other big learning experience for anybody who wants to grow a business is learning to step out of it. I read a very good book by the founder of Xerox. Well, I can't remember his name, but he had very curly, kinky hair. That's how they got the name Kinko's. It was his nickname, believe it or not. That's okay. A true story.
Interesting.
That's where Kinko's came from. But his book was very profound because as I read it, he talked about those plateaus he would hit with his company. He started out Xerox in a college town. It was just an all-night copy shop that did really well because college students needed copies late night. They were working on their term papers or whatever, and they
Was
don't.
it Xerox or Kinko's that he started?
Kinko's.
Okay. You just said Xerox you interchanged a couple times. I just wanted to clarify for people listening.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Yeah.
He was definitely Kinko's. Obviously, he worked with Xerox, but he was definitely Kinko's.
Right.
So, so his book about how he started Kinko's was very beneficial to me because he talked about how over time, when he got to a successful plateau, he couldn't go any further because he was limited by him being the only one making the call, making the decisions, or doing certain aspects of the work.
Right.
And he talked about being stuck in the forest amongst the trees when you have to elevate yourself up and look down and be able to see an overview to see where you're going. You
Right.
can't see where you're going if you're in the forest. You have to be above it to have a plan to see where you need to go. And I took that to heart once we reached a certain point where I realized I couldn't do everything myself. I brought somebody in to help me with the bookings portion of it. She was really good. She was with me for like 6-7 years and really helped me establish sort of a rhythm of how we did things and how we handled things and how we set up policies for booking artists and how we handled customers and all that sort of thing. And it was such a good precedent that when we had a replacement, I mean, she helped train the replacement. And then the next step was, I don't want to be doing the books anymore. I spend too much time doing the accounting, and accounting's getting to a certain level with QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online that I don't want to have to learn QuickBooks Online to the degree that I would need to be my own accountant. And I'm the most expensive inept accountant I could hire.
Yeah, right.
You know? It's like I'm the most costly person to be doing this, and I'm not that good at it. You know, I'm competent. I could do it and be competent, but that would be it. So that was the next stage is bringing in an accountant. And if you're scared of the idea of hiring these people, a lot of times, like initially, we didn't need anybody. We didn't need anybody full time. So we didn't need to have them on a payroll a week. I just said, tell you what, I'll pay X amount an hour. You'll keep track of your own hours like an independent contractor, like a freelancer, like I used to do. And you'll invoice me once a month and I'll pay you straight up. And that was doable with all of them. They were happy with that arrangement. I have to trust, you have to put a little trust out there. I have to trust that they're not adding hours and stuff. But I mean, it's like anything. Like, look, if you become too expensive, I'll just drop you. So they kind of self-monitor themselves. And I've never had an issue with that with any of the people that I brought on. So I had now I had a booking manager and an accountant. Then I needed to get somebody who was really good at the online marketing stuff. And that was touch and go for a while. And it took a long time before my wife actually ran into somebody who knew somebody at a networking event. And that was you. So
hey,
there's an example of networking right there. So yeah, and so it's been very critical because right now I feel confident with the staff that I put together, that we work with. Everybody works harmoniously with each other. Everybody's trying to achieve the same goals. And we've been lucky that, since you've been doing what you're doing and I do what I do and the others do, we've seen continual growth year after year. I couldn't be any happier. I'm able to do things like my business is based in Michigan. I don't have to deal with being in Michigan in the winter.
Yeah, I don't see the snow in Rochester there. What's the deal?
No snow behind me. That's water. That's the pool in the facility that townhomes that I'm currently spending the winter months. And my wife and I, whom I met her when I was in art school down here, so we ended up getting ourselves a place for the winter down here. So now we spend January, February, March down here for now. We'll probably expand that as time goes by because everybody knows what April is like in Michigan. It's still pretty sucky. So but with everything being so virtual and you doing what you're doing online up there and everybody else working virtually, I don't have to stay in Michigan all the time, which is freedom.
Yeah. And that's a big goal. I think a lot of times people start business. I want to be my own boss, but the worst boss you can possibly have is you. And, because you have all the mistakes that you make, you don't treat yourself very well. You make yourself work extra hours without more pay, all the things that you would never do to other people, you do to yourself. But if you want to grow a business and do it well, you need to be able to scale, and you need to be able to, as you mentioned, trust, and be able to step out of the picture, because that is the ultimate goal. You'd like to see all your hard work continue on beyond, having to work 80 hours a week, and to be able to go down to Florida, enjoy yourself, pick up gigs like you do, or whatever else, and check in and make sure your team's working, be the leader, but not have to be the grinder. And that's
right. If you're a micromanager, you are going to have the hardest time successfully growing a business, because I've seen so many stories like that, whether I've watched reality shows on businesses or talked to people directly. But you get those people that want to wear all the hats and they want to do everything because it's got to be done my way, and that's why I'm going to succeed, because I'm all about excellence. It's like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, they didn't do everything. They knew how to delegate. The most successful people, it's all about delegation. Sure, you're the soul of the company. They'll always come to you and go, how should we do this? And I still get that on a daily basis. But I'm very lucky that I have adults working under me. That's the other critical thing. If you're going to have people working with you, you want those people who can make decisions for you. You don't want people who constantly have to bug you to say, how should I do this? How do you want me to do this? How do you want me to do this tomorrow? I learned early on, I was not a micromanager. I liked being able to offload a bunch of the detail work to other people who I trusted to do it. But I could then look at the big picture and make decisions about how to grow the company, what direction do we go in, and it also keeps you from burning out.
It's a good point.
This is our 18th year since I started Goofy Faces, 19th year, and that's a long time, and it feels like 5 years. It feels so short, because there's been such a process and evolution over those 19 years. That what I was doing 19 years with the company, 19 years ago to now, is so different. If I was still doing what I was doing at the beginning, I'm sure I'd be burnt out. I would have quit. I would have gotten out of it. I think that's probably another critical point, is if you are, operating a business, and maybe you're at a good point and the business is going well, but you're starting to feel a little stressed out, and look at all the stuff that you're doing. What is the most important stuff you're doing? Unless you're running an accounting company, you're probably not the best bookkeeper for your own company. And there's people out there, and this would amaze me, they just are crackerjack at it. They're really good, and they look out after you. I think that was the biggest pleasant surprise. I've got 8 locations with 8 managers who have assistant managers. I have my accountant, I have my booking manager, and I am finding more times than not that when I have sit downs and discussions with them, they're making decisions that are more critical and better thought out than when I was making them. They're being tougher bosses or more scrutinizing ideas and plans and everything than I used to do, and they're making a better company for it. And that's extremely reassuring when you've got people that are doing a better job than you realize that you would have done yourself. Then you realize you've reached a point where your business is now about the people that you have with you, that you surround yourself with, your managers. Right. In my case, I've got managers, my core group, which I include you to be part of that. And then I've also got we currently represent about 500 artists around the country. And, we all are generally walking in the same direction. That's the other big part of it too. You all have to be kind of facing the same way so that you can continue to slowly but steadily move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap up here, Robert, what if somebody is just, maybe in a cubicle right now and has that itch, and is listening to this or watching
like
this?
My cubicle.
Yes, exactly. What would you recommend to them as to consider maybe making those first steps if they should? What are some of the things that you would recommend to them if they just called you on the phone right now? I'm in the cubicle. I'm not sure what I have this, what I should do. What do I do, Robert? What is it?
Rule 1, don't get into caricatures. Okay, that's covered. Don't need to go there.
No need for that.
We got that. But if you have some other passion that you're into, I mean, mine's obviously really focused on art, and I don't just make a living as an art. I'm an artist, and that's who I am. That can be a big part of it. you know, who are you? Are you big into music? Are you big into art? Are you big into sports or whatever? You know, they tell you to follow your passion. I agree with that to a certain part, but that can be misleading, because if your passion is, you know, long naps or, you know, fishing all the time, you know, great. It's a great passion, but how do you generate income doing that? How do you build revenue from that? And that can be really, really difficult. So, I would say to analyze objectively as much as possible what it is you want to do. You're going to have an idea. If you just say, I just don't want to work in a cubicle, that's not enough. It's like, well, what are you going to do instead of having this full-time job? Is it related to what you're currently doing? Or is it a passion that you've always had on the side that you figured, there's got to be a way I can make money doing this? And maybe there is. If you get to that stage where it's like, okay, I kind of have my head and hands wrapped around what it is I want to do. You don't have to have it 100% nailed down, because I certainly didn't. But you got to have it like, okay, I think I know what I want to do with it. Then your next step is you have to find others related to that ideal that you can pick their brains. And that can be challenging at times, because, you know, maybe your thing is so specific that those that also do it aren't nearby or whatever, or maybe they don't want to be as open. But if you are persistent enough, you will find people out there willing to share a lot of their knowledge. I was extremely lucky. I met, I remember early on, I picked the brain of a successful artist out of Ohio, and she was beneficial. She was starting up a concession just before I started up mine, and she had all sorts of insight. Later on, once I was a member of ISCA, I met many really successful artists. I got to know Tom Richmond, who works for Mad Magazine. He's one of their illustrators. He has several caricature stands around the country. He now does high-end caricature workshops throughout the United States, where you can pay to go and take a 2-day course with him. And he was an open book. I could call him and ask him, you know, what should I do? Where should I go? How do I set pricing? How do I find artists? And he would talk to me for, you know, a half hour to an hour on the phone and just say, you do this, you do this, you do this. He was extremely open-minded and very, very helpful, and not worrying about me competing with him or anything. And the more successful people, you'll get that. I mean, if somebody doesn't want to open up to you, they usually have a little bit of insecurity, and they feel threatened, but they really shouldn't, especially if you don't come across in a threatening way, like, hey, how do I take over your business? You know,
Right. I think a lot of times when people get to that level, they already have their brand. They're pretty solid in who they are, and know that people are coming to them because of them. Often, as I've mentioned back, you know, related to the photography days of, you know, I don't want somebody looking for a photographer. I want somebody looking for me. And eventually, as you build your brand, that starts to happen. And people's, just like you were mentioning with the retail, people are now looking for you because you have something that they see valuable. And so, but that takes time, as we all know. So very good. Robert, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're having a rough time down there in Florida.
Yeah, I know. It might chill off to like 75 tonight. I'm not sure, but I've got socks in case it gets too cold, so I'm okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Make sure that you check out the other six-figure shows, and there will be another one coming soon. Robert, you have a great day. Thank you again. We'll talk to you all again soon.
All right, everybody, have a great time. Take care. Good luck.